right, so this is gonna be part 2 of the biggest challenges that I faced when I started my car rental business and how I overcame them. All right, let's go. The next one, and this is a big one, I know for a lot of you guys, insurance, right? So when we started, we were just accepting anything, right? I didn't know the ins and outs of insurance. I mean, I had insurance knowledge and insurance experience, but like, because I was so thirsty for the money, right? You know, you start taking whatever, you know, or sometimes customers could apply pressure. I mean, you know, maybe it's a high profile customer, like, oh yeah, my insurance is good, man, and they'll just throw some crap at you and you accept it, right? And things like that, you know, and then we find out later when there's an incident and we have to file, oh yeah, insurance company denies that claim. We had a celebrity, local celebrity, and you guys know, I don't want to mention the person's name, R&B singer, and they rented a car from us and they gave us a progressive commercial policy. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, it's a celebrity, I'll take it, even though I knew commercial policies don't cover, but I took it. And guess what? They scratched my Lambo pretty good, and the insurance was going to pay for it, right? But luckily, we took a good security deposit. We just coughed it up, used a security deposit to fix it. And we couldn't make money off of it, but at least we got it taken care of. But you know, things like that can happen, right? Or you know, we weren't fair. People would have these crappy insurance policies, maybe the General or Fred Lawyer insurance or whatever. And back then, when I first started, you know, we would just accept it. You know, but now we know better. We know which ones not to touch. We know how to properly verify these things. And I even used to sell Allianz on exotics and stupid stuff like that. Just pushing the envelope, right? I'll be selling Allianz on, you know, cars up to $75,000. Not really reading the Allianz policy to see what covers. But now I won't even touch those things with a 10-foot pole with any of my high luxury exotic cars. Heck no. The economy cars, you could do things like that. Daily rent insurance policies, but luxury and exotic cars, heck no. But when we first started, I was listening to other people telling me, oh yeah, we just, you know, other insurance rental car companies would say, oh yeah, we'll take that. Oh, you mean you don't take the General? And yeah, but like other rental car companies will send me customers and they're like, oh yeah, the guy has the General or whatever insurance, it's good. I know him, he's good for it. And they pressure me into taking a deal and something always happens, right? Now, if it doesn't pass our guidelines, we're not touching it, right? So that was another thing that we learned, and kind of going back to something I mentioned earlier, one of my earlier points too, just not listening properly. You know, when you have somebody call, a boyfriend call, and he's saying, asking about the cars and the prices, and he's like, oh yeah, it's my girl's insurance, you know. Things like that are red flags, right? And we would never pay attention because insurance will not pay, especially when you're doing prom rentals, right? And it sounds like a 16-year-old kid calling about a Lamborghini or something. And oh yeah, my mama got insurance. And then you go rent the car out, and guess what? The mama hands the car over to the kid, the 16-year-old, to go drive. 16-year-old is not on the policy because she doesn't want to be paying the $1,000 a month. A 16-year-old drives that car to prom and wrecks that car, you're held liable, right? So it's learning things like that to where now it's like, no, we're not doing that. Mama's driving, kitty better be on the policy, or we can chauffeur that car to make sure nobody else drives it. So it's just being very strict and sticking to policies. That cuts out a lot of these things, right? So that's why having SOPs or standard operating procedures in place for your team is very, very, very important in this game, right? And then the next challenge that I had to overcome was client acquisition, right? Marketing. How was I getting my clients? So initially when I first started, just like a lot of you guys, right? My game plan was Turo, right? I was like, all right, bet, let me use Turo. Turo will get me enough business, blah, blah, blah. Well, then I quickly found out, you know, first off, you couldn't even put those exotics on Turo initially, right? So I'm like, crap, you know, that was the first thing. But then my lower cars, I was able to put them on Turo, but then, you know, I kept noticing, initially the car was like $399, getting a few rentals, then all of a sudden, all my competitors crashed their prices down to $299. I'm like, oh crap, now I gotta drop my price. I kept dropping my price down. And, you know, price kept dropping and dropping to where I wasn't making enough money on Turo, right? And I was like, oh, this can't cut it, this ain't gonna work. And then, you know, Turo had these laws, these rules where, you know, I had this one cat rent my Maserati. And normally I don't like people leaving the Dallas area with my cars, but you know, with Turo, you can't stop them. And so, buddy takes my car all the way out to Louisiana, you know, and then they hit me up from Louisiana telling me there's a problem with the car, you know, so that experience, I just don't want to have to relive it. And then he went ghost for a few days, wouldn't you call his phone, you couldn't get a hold of him, nothing. And then after like 3 or 4 days, he passed the rental period, he just shows up, he calls, sends us a text saying, oh, the car is at the DFW airport in the parking garage, and tells us where it's at, tells us to go pick it up, the keys in the car. You know, we get to the car, windows are busted out, you know, trash the car, you know, so I kind of just put a bad taste in my mouth, and that's when I think we just stopped using the platform, like, you know, it's not worth the hassle. And then, you know, so then we started trying to figure out ways to get business. And then, so we're doing grassroots marketing. A bunch of brokers started reaching out to us. And then, so initially I was over relying on these brokers, man. I had this one broker in town sending me a whole bunch of business, you know, and that's it. When you find a good broker, they'll send you a lot of business. But the problem is with some of them, you don't know where they're getting these leads from. Right? You know, if it's a broker that's always in the clubs, you know, and he's sending you that kind of business, that nightclub business, right? And that avatar is very risky. So they're sending you all kinds of crap, man. People with, you know, sketchy backgrounds, and insurance ain't right, driver's license ain't right. You know, they might have good insurance, but then their license is suspended, or, you know, something like that, right? There's always something with them, and then we're just having issues with that, right? But then because the money is good, these guys will be the ones, they'll be the ones that show up with cash, with a wad of cash. They'll drop the money on the table, and it's hard to turn them down, right? A lot of them underage too, right? Because these brokers, a lot of them are also younger cats, so they're sending you a lot of underage business, and that's the riskiest one. Like 25 or under is the riskiest niche or age group in this business, and I was doing a lot of that when I first started. It was mostly under 25, they pay good money cash, but Lord have mercy, it's a lot. There was very high risk, high reward, but it almost took us out of business. You know, these guys would always try to finesse, or, you know, there's always something, man. There's always something. Sometimes they just stop answering their calls, man. Payment was due 2 weeks ago. You can't get a hold of them anymore. Or, you know, they have a fender bender or scratch something, and insurance was no good to begin with. And it's always they're the ones that always try to finesse things, you know. There's always something with that crowd to where, like, you know, we just couldn't do it no more, man. And then some of these brokers are shady. You know, you got to be careful with some of them too. Some of these brokers would collude with these thieves to try to steal the car from you too, right? So, because they're like, oh yeah, this guy doesn't really know what he's doing, let's go get him, right? And then they'll just throw a bunch of business at you. They'll send you some good ones, and then the bad one will come to steal a car from you, or total you, something, some scam they'll try to run on you, right? So initially I was just over relying on these brokers. Almost 80% of my business was coming from them, because I've left Turo, and so I'm just relying on these guys to keep feeding me business initially. And all of this was happening within my first year, guys. This is all the stuff I went through my first year, trying to figure this whole thing out. And some of you guys might be wondering, how did I get to meet these brokers? Well, because I had these flashy cars, they came to me, right? They came to me. A lot of them were coming around, showing up in my warehouse every single day, you know, shake hands and promise me business. And so I was just getting into a lot of these issues, man. So you guys got to vet these brokers. Don't just have a random person call you out, and then you start to trust them and, you know, do business with them. You got to know who you're doing business with too, right? So that's another thing. And then when I also started too, right, I had this philosophy, like I wanted to change the game, right? At this point, and this is fast forward a few years now, right? Maybe 2-3 years in. Matter of fact, this started the first day one. I started going to all my competitors, and I just knocking on their doors, trying to meet them. Like, hey, let's all do business together, right? A lot of them didn't even want to know me. They didn't even want to talk to me. Like, you're the ops, so why would I talk to you, right? So a lot of them shunned me initially. So it took a while before they warmed up, and then they saw, oh yeah, he's good people's, and then they started dealing with me. A lot of them would gatekeep, won't give me information, but I was just giving them the sauce. As I was learning the things I was learning, because of my corporate background and insurance background, I was able to fix a lot of these problems quickly, right? And then found out that most of my competitors, their processes were crap, was shit. Like, you know, they didn't even know what they were doing, right? And so a lot of them started getting game from me, and were collaborating and all of that. And so me being a genuine, kind-hearted person, I'm not thinking the worst of them, right? I'm thinking, all right, these are good people. These are my brothers. We could all be like a brotherhood, and let's collaborate. Let's share information, right? Like, someone tries to scam me, I'm letting all of them know. So I try to set that up amongst each other too. But then I quickly found out, like after a while, that, you know, not everybody that smiles at you likes you, right? Like, a lot of people are Kaiser Sosas, right? A lot of people are two-faced, right? And so I hate to say it, but now I don't really collaborate much with my competitors anymore, just because I found out that a lot of them didn't have my best interest in heart. And so take this how you want to take it, but my suggestion to you is always be discerning, be like a Berean, and make sure you know who you're even dealing with, right? And I got stories for days with that, right? So what we would do is, the way we collaborate is, say another rental car company needs a car, I'll send him a car, and I trust that he has the right processes. He would vet the customer and put the right people in my car, and pay me my bread, and my car come back the way I gave it to him. Found out the hard way. You'd give one here in my city. It's like one of the top dogs. The straw that broke the camel's back is my Lambo. Perfect condition, good condition, no problems with this car. I never had issues with my Lambo other than the oil change. I send it to buddy. He gives it out to whatever his trash customer is, and guy had it for like 3 days, right? Paid good bread for it. Car comes back, and the lift is broke. I get a call Sunday morning talking about the tires went out. The both rear tires or some crap went out. The car was all the way in the hood. He sends me a picture of the car in the hood on a lift in some booty tire shop. That was the first red flag. I'm like, what the freak happened to my car and the tires, right? So, after we get it out from there, all the check-in, all the lights were on, right? My lift, the Lambo has a lift, and the lift was broke. It won't lift anymore. Check engine light was on. It cost me almost $10,000 to get that car back in shape. And you know what my competitor has said to me? Oh yeah, your car was garbage when you gave it to me. Meanwhile, we got pictures, we got pre-inspection pictures when we gave him the car, no lights on, car was in tip-top shape. You could even look at the pictures, zoom in, rear tires look great. So whatever, thug he gave my car to just trashed the heck out of my Lambo over the 3 days. And he wouldn't even give me the security deposit. That's how bad this was, because he was more interested in preserving his relationship with his customer than with me. I thought that was my brother, right? And so till today, I haven't even spoken to him about that. I forgive, but we don't have to do business ever again, right? So for me, it was just like, no, I'm not. The fact that he did that, and ever since then, my Lambo's been perfect. Not had an issue. So that tells me, and this had happened before in the past, but I just, once again, initially I had that over-reliance on them. We're collaborating. I'm like, all right, let me foster this collaboration. I'm like, all right, yeah, we can do business together. And for me also, maybe now looking inwards introspectively, it was one of those things where I was just happy to be doing business with them. These are guys that have been in the business longer than me. I was glad to be at the table. We're all doing deals together. So I would just happily, hey, you need this car, you need that car, here, you have them, right? Trusting them, right? And just happy to be, but then now I'm like, they don't even know what I don't need any of these. I could take my shit to the moon on my own. I don't need none of them, right? So that's when, I just had to cut all of that off. It just was too much headaches, not worth it. I moved on. Another thing too, with the whole marketing and me thinking collaboration is king was another one too. Another one of my competitors here, I noticed a trend. What they'd be doing with me is, say my Lambo, I normally rent that out for like $14.99. When they want my Lambo, they would always underprice me. They would offer me, I'll give you $500 a day for it. And then I know they're charging their customers $16, $17, $18.90. So they were making more money on my car than I'm making, right? So they would always treat me that way. But then on the flip side, when I want one of their cars, I'm almost paying retail. If they're renting theirs out for $14.99, they're giving it to me at $12.99. So I was seeing those trends, right? There's one particular one here too, right? He would always do that. He's always doing that to me. I tried to even rent an Escalade from, oh yeah, you can have my Escalade for $1,000 a day. What the freak? So they'd always, and then with mine, I remember once telling him I forget what I told him I had. It was, I think it was a Urus. And he said he would give me $300 or $400 for my Urus a day. So seeing those, just the double standards, that's when I knew, yeah, I'm not doing the collaboration thing with a lot of them. And then the final one that's when I told my team to shut it down completely, was another one of our major competitors here in Dallas, right? We're sending him business, right? Good customers wanted his Rolls Royce for several days. We send over the car. The clients come to us, and this is where my team messed up. I was out of town. My team messed up. We send them the business, so the customers go to him. We never see the customers. My team made a mistake. We collected the payment. We put it on our rental contract, right? And we send the customers to him, and he services these guys the whole time. We never see these customers, right? At the end of the rental, he tells us, "Oh yeah, rental's over. Send me my money." We send him his money. We refund the customer security deposit. Everybody says goodbye, right? Fast forward 7 hours that day, later on in the evening, or almost close to night time, he hits me up saying, "Oh man, I just found out that the windows, the back windows were busted out." What do you mean the back windows are busted out? How did you find that out 7 hours after the rental was over, right? And then now he's harassing us, calling us every 5 minutes, demanding that we not only get the security deposit and send it to him, but then I also pay to replace his windows. And then he's sending me quotes from Rolls-Royce directly asking for thousands of dollars to replace the rear windows. And I had to pay that. I had to pay that out of my pocket because my team made the mistake of putting it on my paper, right? These are customers we never saw. He handled everything, right? And Buddy lives in a beautiful, beautiful apartment complex, right? With security and all of that. And still, we had to pay. And, conveniently for him, no security cameras to prove. All right, like show us pictures. Did you have inspection photos when the car was brought back? No. Was there CCTV cameras showing that the windows are busted when you got the car? No. So it was his word against the customer's word, and we were stuck in the middle. And unfortunately, I had to take that L. And so I'm just sharing, guys. I know this seems like a rant, but these are things that could happen to you. And I'm just sharing my experiences. I know this is gonna be a long video, but I just wanna get these off my chest because I know some of you guys might have gone through this, you might resonate with this, or you might be going through that right now. So you guys don't make those same mistakes. So now, what we do is if we're sending business to another rental car company, we just send it over. Send over the referral, pay us our money immediately. We walk away. Whatever happens between you and the customer, that's between y'all and the customer. We ain't got nothing to do with it. It's not gonna go on our paper, none of that stuff, right? And vice versa. Any rental car companies that call us wanting to rent out any of our cars, we must handle the process from A to Z. It's gonna be on our paper, we handle the inspections, take the payment, all of that stuff, security deposit. We control the deal. If you don't feel comfortable sending us your customer and us getting the customer data, then I'm sorry, we're not giving you none of our cars. So we just have to turn things around, tighten up ship. These are the things I've experienced over the years that a lot of you guys might also experience. And it's just having the right process in place. And these things won't happen to you, right? These are things that happened when we first started. And that's why, I try to pour into people having the right structure. It's very important. So these things won't happen to you, right? And one final one for good mention too, right? We have a deal to rent out a Rolls-Royce, right? And we contact this other rental car company, right? And we're like, "Hey, we got a customer wants your Rolls-Royce for a few days, bring it over." And they're all excited. "Oh man, bet. But oh man, I'm out of town, I can't make it. Oh, I'm somewhere." No, they weren't even out of town. They're like, "Oh, I'm too busy right now, I can't bring the car to you guys. Send your staff to come get it though instead," right? And so my team, they go out there to go get the car, and as my staff is bringing back the car, he taps a FedEx truck, and it's a Rolls Royce. He taps it, messes up the front bumper, right? Immediately, I'm in California at the time. Immediately, I get a phone call from the other rental car company. Your staff wrecked my car. It's gonna cost almost $30,000, and you need to pay me now. Like, what the? Like, what are you talking about? This is a deal that we got for them. Told them to come bring the car to us. You should bring the car to us. And Buddy lived like almost an hour away. You were meant to bring the car to us. And then instead you begged for my staff. You called and begged for my staff to come get it from your house. And then something happens on the way. You want me to be held responsible. Is that fair? Right? So, but this one kind of hurts me the most because I had a good relationship with them. They're nice, they're cool peoples, and I really till today regret that scenario. But it's just one of those things where I guess the blame could go both ways. Like for me, it's like now my staff, we're not going to go get nobody's car. If you send it the deal, you pay us. If you can't come bring your car to us, or you can't take it to the customer, then no deal. So now we limit our exposure. We don't want to touch any of that stuff. So that's another thing too, guys. If you guys have staff and employees, you might not want to have your staff doing runs for other car rental companies or any Turo host. If you're, it's things that we used to do initially, right? Like we'd have some Turo hosts. We had a big warehouse. Turo hosts would beg us if they could park their cars in our warehouse, and then they would sometimes they'll have a deal, and then they'll call my staff directly and beg my staff to go deliver the car. And then I was just cool with it, like, all right, yeah, you can help them out as long as they tip them. But guess what? They would immediately in a heartbeat hold my staff responsible for anything that happened on that trip. And that's where I had to cut a lot of that stuff off. Like, we're not dealing with any of that stuff anymore. So those are things that I had to learn, guys. And final thing is going to be scaling, right? Number one, location matters, right? When I was ready to start scaling, I went first off, I had my first warehouse, a little small itty bitty, about 1,800 square foot warehouse. We were doing good numbers initially, but the space was too small. It was too far away from the city center. And so we needed to get closer to the airports, right? So I quickly had to go get another warehouse. I saw a good one close by the warehouse, by the airport, my 6,000 square foot warehouse in Irving, Texas. I'm not from Irving, so I didn't really know the area as well. Probably should have researched it more. But in hindsight, it wasn't the best of locations and I didn't know it at the time, right? We're still doing good numbers, right? But we could have done a whole lot better. Now I know why, and I'll tell you guys the reason why. Because your warehouse, your location matters. Let's say just picture this: you have an exotic car rental company, and it's close to the hood, right? It's closer to the hoodish part of town, right? You're not gonna attract your Louis Vuitton, your premium customers, right? They're not gonna want to go to that zip code, right? And at the time, it didn't really register to me till we moved to the facility we're in now, where it's a whole different avatar. Literally overnight, my avatar flipped. It went from crowd I was getting in my Irving warehouse. The funny thing is, I've had people that used to rock with me when I was at my old warehouse, they come to the new one and they're intimidated. They feel out of place there, and that's good. And that's where I knew, that was confirmation that we needed. Because now at this new location, all of a sudden, we're getting wealthy people, we're getting surgeons, we're getting rich people that even have exotics in their fleet. They just want to, I never tested this one out. You're just a different level. So location 100% matters. If you're deciding to actually open up a physical location for your warehouse, please make sure you research the zip code. See the income levels of the people around that zip code. That makes a big difference, right? Actually take the time to do that research before you sign on the dotted line. Because for me, that's what took us to the next level, where we started to attract. Now, most of our clients are qualified that reach out to get into these cars, right? It's just a different avatar. You also have customers that want to come see the vehicle before they rent, right? Before, they would come to the old warehouse, and that Louis Vuitton customer, once they drive into that neighborhood, we changed our mind about the rental, or but now, where we're at now, it's amazing. There's a restaurant and bars. It's a whole different vibe. They come while we're getting the car valeted out for them. They're maybe eating or having a quick drink or something, and it's just a whole different vibe to where, just inviting higher quality clientele for us, right? And then another thing when it comes to scaling too, right, that I've learned too is, now you start to look into the numbers, right? I was wanting to multiply my fleet, start buying more cars, right? I was buying more cars, but then you get to a point where the name of this game is how much money can I make with as little expenses as possible. That's what it is, because this is all about arbitrage. We're trying to we want to make that money in between. Revenue, expenses here. How can I push expenses as low as possible to where I'm making this much in profit? That's all this game is all about, right? And so finding ways to optimize and keep on dropping those expenses. And one of the fastest ways, because what is most of y'all's biggest expenses? It's gonna be your car payments and your insurance, right? Stop buying too many cars. You're gonna get, especially those of you guys in the exotic and the luxury space, high luxury, right? You get to a point where now you're on autopilot, you're getting business, you wanna keep buying cars, you wanna stop. At some point, you gotta make a name for yourself, establish a brand. Once you have a good brand, a trustworthy brand, promise you, people will start to send cars at you and you won't have to buy a car ever again. And that's where you want to get to. Now you're making profit. You have no skin in the game. It's all house money, and you're making your percentages. If it's 50-50 splits you're doing with these guys that are consigning cars with you, you're doing 60-40 splits in their favor, or 70-30, whatever it is, it's better than no money, right? And these are cars that you didn't have anyways, and you're just making money on them, right? So now our major expense now is going to be parking those cars, warehousing those cars, plus our ad spend, right? Those are our two major expenses now, instead of before where our major expenses used to be car payments and insurance, right? Man, at some point, my overhead in just the cars and insurance was slightly over $20,000, right? Now it's all the way down to, I think we're about $7,000. My Bentley's paid off. We're about $7,000, and I'm looking to continue liquidating my cars. Right, and this is just my car payments and insurance, right? So it's how do you keep optimizing and dropping down those expenses? That's the name of this game, and then you start cash flowing. So now our strategy now is just mostly, brokering our cars, and even with that, you don't want to take. We're also learning this as we go, right? Because we just gotten into this phase where now we're taking in more cars now, but then it's taking in the right cars, because it has to be cars that can move, right? And then giving the people giving you these cars, giving them the right expectations, right? Sometimes some people might give you a car at the wrong season. You can't do anything about it. You can't put sugar on shit, right? If it's a car that maybe moves the most during prom and they give it to you after prom is over, you have to set those expectations that this car might not move as much then, right? So it's just doing things like that. Or if say you're in a state where it's always rainy or cold and someone gives you a convertible, right? Setting those expectations that this car won't move till it's summertime, right? So, and then once you do that, you're able to manage expectations. It's the best way to run this car rental business at scale, right? You don't want to start brokering from day one. Nobody's going to trust you, and you don't know what you're doing. You don't want to be playing with someone else's car, right? For me, my philosophy is I'd rather their car sit and not be rented than be trapping out their cars and something happens. That way they can get their car back in good condition. So you want to be mindful about that, right? So that's still one of the biggest shifts, so to speak, that we've been making the past few years. That's really been helping and dropping down our overhead, right? And that's stuff that we had to learn as we went, because initially, before, we were just buying cars. We just kept buying and buying and buying, right? So now we've dropped down. I went from a peak of almost 16 cars, and now I'm down to maybe about 6-7 cars in my fleet now that I own personally, right? So I'm just slowly cropping that down, right? And then the final thing too, and you guys won't believe this, when I first started, almost the whole first year, I was using paper contracts, guys. Most of my stuff was all manual. It was all manual. Outside of using Turo, man, people come, you got cash, I'm writing a paper contract up, and getting my money, right? So I was doing that for the longest time. And I didn't really have a CRM where all my customers were in. CRM is a customer relationship management system. I didn't really have one where you could see all my customers. We would just kind of winging it. And so eventually, and unfortunately I regret that because we've lost a lot of that data, or jumping around from rental software to rental software. And as you guys know, a lot of these rental softwares, you can't transfer the clientele from one to the next one, right? So now you're losing all that clientele and starting over again. Every time you hop around like a hoe, you're losing all those customers. And so we've kind of settled down on one, and that's what we're using now and sticking to it, right? So we use finesse.com right now, and it works just fine for us, man. I had rental software I was paying, man, they charged me almost $2,000, $20-something $100 down to start, and paying like almost $500-600 a month. We used to pay a lot of money for some of these software. And after a while, we had to cut down a lot of that stuff, and work just gets the job done. Now, for me, at the end of the day, is how can I get a payment, and how can I send off DocuSigns and all of that stuff. That's, for me, is the most important thing I need. And then reporting, I don't need a lot of all this other fancy stuff that they come with. So it just kind of worked. Price was fine, so we kind of stuck with that, right? So, rental software, definitely, you don't need that. So I'll suggest that you guys definitely find one, Fleet Finesse, you try it out and see if it works for you. But that definitely changed the game for us to help us automate a lot of stuff and, get things in order. So guys, man, I hope this video was good enough. I hope you guys found, even if it's just 1 or 2 gems, man, from my experiences, right? Not a lot of people tell you these things, right? But I like to keep it real with you guys and give you guys the real on the day-to-days and the car and the challenges that I had to go through when I first started. And hopefully this can help some of you guys.